Chronolife, another world. The hottest continent at the moment is now open. When you connect to another world, the first thing that awaits you is 100 million new users, incredible companions, and conquering dungeons and bosses alongside them. At least, that's what the developers of this game promised. System alert. A new character has been created. Welcome, King Gok player. After hearing the system's greeting, the protagonist stood still for a few more seconds, staring at the horizon. Without a doubt, the landscapes of the new continent were breathtaking. However, there was something wrong there. Why the hell isn't anyone here? He thought. Where were those promised 100 million new users? And what was that thing he was holding? A shovel? Without understanding what the developers wanted him to do with that item, King Gok stuck the shovel into the ground. At that very second, the earth beneath his feet glowed with an intense blue light. Suddenly, a huge block of earth was thrown into the air. The spectacle left the boy literally paralyzed. The block fell with a crash beside his feet, and Gok, still in shock, looked at it in bewilderment. What the hell is that? Did I enter the wrong game? He thought. Not knowing what else to expect from that crazy piece of land, he decided to poke the block with the shovel. There was a small explosion. The piece of land disappeared before his eyes and appeared in his inventory. At the same time, it seemed that the creators of Chronolife simply copied the basic mechanics of humanity's most popular game. Wanting to see if it would work on other things, Gok ran to the nearest tree, and when he hit the trunk with the shovel, a piece broke off and went straight into his inventory. Soon after, the system notified the player that a new crafting item was available. In the window that appeared before him, the user was asked to craft a chair using just a piece of wood. But was it really that easy? There was no way to create a chair with just one click, right? After thinking for a while, Gok confirmed the crafting. At that same instant, a wooden chair began to materialize right in front of him. In the end, the chair was created, and the wooden block disappeared from the player's inventory. Leaning back in his chair, Gok laughed excitedly and commented that the mechanics were very unusual, but his joy didn't last long. He soon realized he was alone. Where did I end up? Is this really Chronolife? Wasn't this game supposed to be an RPG where you kill monsters and level up? System alert. Crafting skill level has increased. More crafting items are available for the King Gok player. Sitting in his chair, in despair, Gok opened the crafting menu. A few more items were available for crafting. This meant that the game still had some kind of skill and level progression. Now the guy could make a wooden club, a sword, and even a damn siege catapult. And it wasn't just that. In the list of all those items, Gok noticed something he wanted to do first. After cutting down more trees and gathering other materials, he chose the right project and began positioning the blocks in the places indicated by the game. When he finished the job, he breathed a sigh of relief. Now, his house was ready. In fact, the gameplay ended up being much more interesting than he initially imagined. Of course, the interior of the new house left a lot to be desired, but after all, it was his first job. Pleased with himself, King Gok lay down on the bed he had recently made. This world wasn't so bad, and the beds there were quite comfortable. It was much cozier than King Gok's real home. Well, that was to be expected. The guy lived in a small apartment in South Korea. Miracles happen to those who try. Your efforts will never betray you. Conquer the self of yesterday. These motivational phrases kept Gok working day after day, and ended up transforming his life into a gray and monotonous routine. But today, upon entering Chronolife, the boy felt as if all the worries of the weekdays had disappeared. Looking at the shovel in his hand, Gok thought about the possibilities this world offered him. A 100-meter house, or maybe a 2-story house with a courtyard. He could build whatever he wanted and live however he wanted. It was then that he realized that this world was truly wonderful. Gok thought about it until a bestial roar came from behind the front door. Turning his head, he saw a ferocious lion bear with danger level A standing on the threshold. It was the first time the boy had seen a monster like that. As he wondered what he should do, the creature roared and charged at him. Miraculously, Gok managed to jump to the side and avoid being hit by the monster's claws. But unfortunately, he did not emerge unscathed. Your favorite soft bed was reduced to splinters. He wasn't going to let that bastard get away with such audacity. "You're dead!" shouted Gok, fiercely pointing the shovel at the enemy. That freak of a bear, for destroying other people's property, I would pay with my life. And when I said for his life, I specifically meant Gok's life. Children, don't play with predatory animals indoors, or else you'll fly into the stratosphere like that fool who decided to hit a bear with a shovel. After losing a few experience points, he was immediately revived to safety. It was then that it finally dawned on him. He was too weak. Looking around, the boy tried to find his home. To his sadness, only ruins of his small cottage remained. Both the bed and the chair died a brave death in an unequal actual combat with the monster. In tears, hugging what was left of his wooden chair, Gok fell to his knees and screamed that just killing him would have been enough. Why the hell did that damn bear have to destroy the house he built so hard? But the bastard will come back sooner or later. Gok still doesn't know how, but he will definitely get revenge on that soulless bear. He's been walking through his territory for hours now. The lion bear again saw a small hut in the middle of the field. With a satisfied roar, the monster broke through the cabin wall at full speed, but upon entering, he froze in despair. "Welcome to the club, buddy," whispered Gok darkly, pointing the siege engine's weapons at the intruder. In the next second, he pulled the lever. Dozens of sharp spears pierced the monster's thick skin, but that wasn't enough to kill him. Stuck like a dartboard, the lion bear charged at the protagonist, and it was for moments like these that Gok recently created a catapult. This little bear has a lot of persistence, but he won't withstand a blow like that. The projectile flew at great speed towards the monster's face, knocking out all of its teeth. As expected, the enemy did not survive the encounter between his skull and the huge stone. With the shovel in his hands, facing the lifeless body of the beast, Gok decided to ensure that it would not come back to life. As soon as the tip of the shovel touched the bear's fur, a bright blue light appeared. The reward for defeating a danger level, a monster, was a piece of meat, 2 lion bear skins, and 5 bones. And it didn't stop there. In the creation menu, the maximum brutal helmet and the lion bear armor were now available. Now, Gok is well equipped and decides to go hunting, but he had no idea he would become not the hunter, but the prey. He had barely closed the creation menu when a shadow fell over him. When he turned around, the boy saw hordes of giant creatures. The meeting ended as quickly as it began, and so Gok, then, for the 12th time, or was it the 49th? The monsters burned his house and sent him flying again. In his 100th or so deaths, he finally began to doubt whether he understood why those creatures were trying to kill him. But why did they destroy perfectly good cabins over and over again? Gok has to rebuild his huts from scratch after each death. All of this makes it seem like these guys are doing this just to piss you off. Since it's like this, they didn't get what they wanted. Did you really think they were going to take Gok out of the game like that? Now they have angered him so much that there is no chance of him getting out of there. Time after time he will be reborn, but he will still kill all these bastards sooner or later. And so the time of the 1000th reincarnation arrived. Hoping to once again destroy the miserable player's humble cabin, the monsters came across a structure of monstrous proportions. The high-peaked building was studded with weapons on all sides. At the highest point, the main character was sitting on a throne with a menacing expression on his face. After explaining to the monsters that they had no chance of fighting him, King Gok ordered them to bring the boss to him. At the same instant, he heard the howl of a flying beast approaching. With its mouth open, the creature was about to devour its victim, when suddenly, a laser beam passed through the flying monster, tearing its body apart. That shot was a warning to the other enemies. If they didn't attack now, they would be shot down one by one. But why were they standing still, not moving? "Are you scared?" asked Gok threateningly, smiling arrogantly. This confident speech provoked the monster army, who charged forward with all their might. But at the same moment, the majority were slaughtered by the castle's defensive weapons. Some even managed to cross the fire barrier and collide with the wall at full speed, trying to break it. His attempts only brought laughter from Gok, who let some monsters get close on purpose just to burn them with flamethrowers. The battlefield became a real hell. The few remaining monsters, realizing the hopelessness of the situation, tried to flee, but their boss did not tolerate the cowardice of these pathetic fools. His name is Gran Turis, the boss of the monsters from the other world. Danger level, GOAT. Anyone who dared to turn their back on the enemy, he crushed with his huge paws. Gran Turis reappeared before him, and this time, Gok hoped to stop him once and for all. On the other hand, the monster boss himself was sure that Gok was a goner. No matter how tall or massive his build was, there was no way he could stop Gran Turis from breathing. Charging the attack, the boss released the flaming jet at full power. "That's it," said Gok, the moment the fire went out. Gran Turis had previously said that no matter how tall or massive the structure was, supposedly nothing could resist its breath. But he only thought so because he had never faced anything as colossal as what Gok had built. Compared to that giant, Gran Turis was just a little lizard. The result was as natural as possible. Gran Turis was crushed with a single blow from that Decepticon's fist. "What is happening in this world? How do we go from Minecraft to souped-up Gurren Lagann?" asked someone. Having defeated the much-hated boss monster, Gok exited the cockpit of his Ganman and jumped to the ground. The boy raised the shovel to the dead creature's torso. A bunch of new items immediately appeared in his inventory: 10 Grand Tourist skins, an eye, 2 fangs, a heart, 6 drops of blood, and other useless things not worth mentioning. The main reward for Gok in this battle was winning the Yahtzee Exak title. His fame began to spread throughout the Otherworld. Furthermore, the ruler of the Otherworld had changed. Grand Tourist was killed and replaced by King Gok. Beings from another world would no longer dare to challenge the new ruler. However, this is far from the end. Since Gok has the privilege of ownership, he can now control everything in the world of Chronolife. This is just the beginning for him. From now on, he can do absolutely anything. Meanwhile, in the domain of an ancient lord from another world, the 7 Legion commanders had already received a system alert that Lord Grand Tourist was dead. Commander Doro initially wanted to send an investigation team to confirm the facts, but soon changed his mind. The system doesn't make mistakes, and so the monsters should prepare for war. The creatures were about to summon all reserves when suddenly a powerful vibration echoed. There was no mistaking those footsteps for anything else. Lord Grand Tourist had arrived in his domain, greatly surprising his servants. After bowing before the Lord, Doro, the Legion commander, reported that they were about to send their warriors for revenge. "So you are all gathered here," said a strange voice coming from Grand Tourist's mouth. As the Legion commanders looked up, they noticed that their lord looked different. "So you're the ones who have been killing and torturing me this whole time? Everything I did, everything I built, were you the ones who destroyed it?" said the guy with the shovel, frighteningly, opening the machine's eye socket and pointing dozens of laser cannons at his victims. Gok realized that each of them deserved exactly the same fate. Without even listening to the monster's objections, he coldly ordered them to shut up and accept their fate. The flaming breath, similar to that of Grand Tourist, incinerated the former lord's domain in that very instant. Soon the ground cooled and silence took over. Back on Earth, King Gok began mining valuable minerals. By the way, meet the commander of the 7th Legion of the Grand Tourist Army, loyal to Doro. This guy will be the protagonist's mascot from now on. Asking his boss if he was tired, Doro offered to help him, saying he could do it alone. Gok pointed out that Doro used to be bigger. How had he survived anyway? The creature, in turn, revealed that it could regenerate even with just one part of its body, although it was becoming smaller and weaker. When Gok said that in that case, he would have no problem finishing him off, Doro tearfully begged to be spared, while Gok continued to place blocks of ore under his feet. The protagonist then decided to ask the Legion General something. He wanted to know why the hell they were trying to kill him. In response, Doro apologized several times. In fact, one day the creator visited them and gave them a revelation. After ordering them to eliminate King Gok, he disappeared. Surprised by this story, the protagonist asked why the creator would get into a fight with a simple user. "Does a bee in the hive understand the mind of the beekeeper?" muttered Doro arrogantly, and then fell silent when he heard Gok say that he was thinking he was too much for someone who could be crushed with a finger. Be that as it may, Doro doesn't know if there is a way to find the creator, and so she can't discover the real reason either. In fact, the creature also had a question at that moment. "What exactly do you do?" asked Doro. King Gok responded with a laugh that he wanted to do something, so he decided to build a tower. Pointing his finger upward, he added that he always wanted to be there at least once. "Your goal is to reach the moon. Sounds like fun. And isn't it interesting what might be there?" he completed. Doro, in turn, shouted that this was absurd. The relative movement of the star, the orbit of the moon, the weight of the rising tower, surviving in the vacuum of space. There were many factors that made it impossible. However, the character explained that his little friend was thinking superficially. He would go there because the moon is there. It's a matter of romance. And besides, it's just a game, so somehow his tower idea is going to work. Astonished by the stupidity of logic and the incompetence of cause and effect, Doro finally realized that the guy was a complete idiot. They were doomed. But now the brute had no choice but to pretend that he served this idiot as his master. And when the opportunity arose, he would certainly destroy him. A whole day passed. King Gok and his little companion continued building the tower. Doro carried the mineral blocks upstairs to the boss, and the protagonist himself placed them in the right places. Occasionally, they took breaks to coordinate the design of the tower, aiming for greater stability. The days passed. Once, Doro was almost taken by a huge bird that was flying by. Oh yes, they also slept at the top of the tower, and while they slept, they were protected by the late Golem Grand Tourist. In fact, these two remind me of myself when I first played Minecraft. Unlike them, however, I never managed to reach Earth's exosphere. It was already cold up there, so they had to make winter clothes. But even with all these difficulties, if we think about it, during the days of uninterrupted work, these two became good friends. Of course, all these events did not go unnoticed by the creator. Trying to reach the moon seemed foolish to him too, but it was interesting. The creator didn't want to disappoint such a dedicated player. Then, when he reached the moon, there would be an interesting event waiting for him. Soon, King Gok, Doro, and their new boss donned spacesuits and stepped onto the surface of the moon. This is one small step for man, one giant leap for the entire Minecraft community. The character never thought that one day he would feel something like this, but the one who was even more shocked was Doro, screaming with joy as loud as she could. He couldn't believe they had actually done it. They actually built a block tower from Earth to the moon. Sitting down, the two looked at the biggest pencil ever built in Minecraft and commented on what an incredible sight it was. In fact, Doro had never seen anything like this in her entire life, and therefore had no idea that the view of the moon was so beautiful. The general thanked Gok for showing him this. Standing up again, the protagonist suggested that they stop resting and start looking for lunar materials. At this moment, there was a thunderous noise. "You came here to die, scum of the blue planet!" growled the monster that appeared before them menacingly. This creature was called the Bloodthirsty Moonlight Rabbit, and its threat level was SS. This little bunny even put on a great show, but was sent to the other world with a single blow. All he managed to do was scare Gok and his companion a little. Doro didn't even have time to understand where her boss had gotten that mechanical thing from. Turns out the rabbit survived. Raising his head, he roared that none of those worms from the blue planet would make it out alive. The sounds that came out of his mouth almost deafened the protagonist and his friend. It turns out that the furry one was calling his companions. Now the situation was starting to look really problematic. Quickly, the rabbits surrounded the two friends. Gok tried to fight his opponents, but a single mechanical claw was clearly not enough. Observing the boss's efforts against the crowd of rabbits, Doro realized that they were not prepared for a large-scale battle. But the Legion General noticed that those monsters only attacked that person and didn't even pay attention to him. Realizing that this was his chance, the creature decided to return to the planet. However, when he remembered the tower, something made him hesitate. As he turned his gaze to Earth, he remembered exactly who had shown him that stunning view that he would never forget. Meanwhile, Gok continued fighting the horde of monsters. Suddenly, one of the rabbits discovered the guy's blind spot and attacked him from behind. At the same time, a certain high-speed projectile passed through the enemy. It was Doro, who, after eliminating the enemy, landed next to his boss. Surprised, Gok said he thought the Legion General was going to run away. Doro, in turn, explained that he would not leave his master alone, as he was grateful for him showing him something so beautiful. And before the crowd of rabbits jumped on them, the protagonist said he liked his partner's attitude. In an instant, the monsters fell with their full weight on the two. Doro already thought it was the end, but when he opened his eyes, he realized he was safe, being taken away from the monsters with Gok's lunar suit. Gok noted that Doro had also gotten a taste of the romantic adventure he spoke of. He passed the test, so there was no longer any reason for the guy to hold back. His power suit had several tools with which he would destroy all those weird rabbits. Extending his arm forward, Gok unleashed the suit's power upon his enemies, a sinister smile on his face. Sometime later, sitting on the moon and looking at Earth, the two friends clinked their glasses as they took a sip of the unknown drink. Doro asked her boss if that was the original goal. Gok, in turn, explained that the idea of writing his name on the moon came about during the process. In fact, they spent a lot of time drawing those letters. Doro wondered why her master was playing like that and doing such a strange task. Then, looking back at the planet, Gok explained that it was fun. Where else could he admire the Earth from the moon? As soon as the guy thought about this, his admiration for the landscape was interrupted by some kind of purple aura. It turns out that there was an explosion of unbelievable power on the ground. A huge chunk of another planet disappeared in a matter of seconds. Observing all this, Doro couldn't believe that her favorite planet had been almost half destroyed. Closing the power suit's visor, Gok ordered his partner to stay there. He himself immediately ran in the direction where the explosion had come from. Everything happened so quickly that Doro didn't even have time to say anything. What the hell is going on? Who could blow up the planet like that? Meanwhile, King Gok had already reached the surface. Enraged by the fact that his buildings could have been destroyed, he swore to kill whoever had done it. Once on the ground, he removed his power suit and attempted to summon the Grand Tourist Golem. To his frustration, he couldn't feel any sign of the golem anywhere. After running a bit more, he finally saw Grand Tourist. More specifically, what was left of it. The golem was even stronger than the last lord of that world. Who would have the strength to defeat him? As soon as the guy thought about this, voices were heard behind him. Boss, there's someone alive here!" came the voice of a high-pitched creature, pointing to the gun in Gok's hand. The mysterious man laughed. "What kind of freak is running around with a shovel?" However, Urus, who was flying alongside the chief, noticed that he himself was walking with a wooden staff. It wasn't that big of a difference. This man possessed the strongest personalized weapon in the Chronolife world, a wooden staff reinforced 99 times. But that didn't bother King Gok. Now he wanted to know who that bastard was and how dare he mess up his property. "All right, let's fight," he said. The strongest user of Chronolife, with the 99+ reinforced wooden staff, was called Peace. Gok didn't recognize him. He hadn't seen any of the other players yet. Looking at the destroyed Grand Turris, the guy realized that it was the work of that weirdo with a bat. And then there was the tower. He worked so hard to build it, to get to the moon and experience true romance. Everything was ruined. And why? Who the hell was he? After what he did, he was obviously a pervert, wearing nothing but underwear. Gok was furious. "Prepare to answer for your actions!" he shouted. Urus, the creature that accompanied the boy, found the joke about the pervert funny and mocked his master in every possible way. The stick guy smiled, amused that Gok didn't know who was in front of him. Peace still had a long way to go and a lot to accomplish, but Gok would soon find out. Peace suddenly took off and charged towards the man. If King Gok didn't know what kind of person he was facing, he would have to pay for his ignorance. Peace quickly approached his opponent, ready to attack. The blow with the wooden bat was incredibly strong, but Gok managed to dodge it using his spacesuit. It was a close call. The last blow took out the left engine. Peace praised his opponent for his speed. The guy had a lot to answer for. He then revealed his entire new arsenal of alien weapons. "Luna missile attack!" he shouted. Several projectiles of different calibers were launched in a single volley at Peace. The guy thought the name was ridiculous and fun. Well, my opponent also has something to show off with. Peace applied a powerful upper hook that lifted stone blocks into the air. Gok saw the rocks approaching and attempted an emergency evacuation. Seconds before, he got out of the spacesuit, which was hit and fell to the ground. The guy then named his next creation. The king's castle emerged from the depths of the earth. Peace was surprised by the appearance of that huge walking castle. With sudden movements, the castle began to strike the place where Peace was. Urus was horrified to see his master disappear from sight. Meanwhile, Doro watched everything from the moon. The dinosaur hoped that his master was okay. The king's castle pressed its huge hand against a single point, but it still couldn't pin the opponent to the ground. Gok couldn't believe his eyes. That guy was blocking everything with a wooden stick. Now, it was time for Peace to show what he was capable of. The pervert quickly climbed up the giant's arm, obviously up to something incredible. In the blink of an eye, Peace was already on top of the walking castle. Gok saw him hovering over his fortress. "Downward strike!" Peace shouted, delivering a devastating blow. From the look on his face, Peace noticed something strange. A bunch of cubes began to appear in the air. First dozens, then hundreds, thousands, and tens of thousands of cubes appear in space. Gok uses his tool to create an entire army of cubes of all types, all thanks to his shovel. A barrier of 1,000,000 cubes was created in seconds, a superior defense against a superior attack. Peace is trying to find out who this guy is, who has so much supernatural power. Even Peace is surprised. That boy with the shovel isn't shy at all, but we need to end it here. The pervert is tired of playing with this. Peace breaks the block barrier at impressive speed and approaches the character. Shovel against wooden stick, collision is inevitable. Which will be stronger? Which tool owner will prevail in this fight? The collision force of these blows was visible even from open space. The entire planet shook from this battle. Pieces of the earth scattered in all directions of outer space. An entire planet was ripped in half. After a short time, Urus finally found his master. Urus was impressed. The guy managed to destroy an entire world. Maybe the developers should have made the world stronger. Suddenly, Peace saw something he didn't expect. The shovel glowed with a bright blue flame in the owner's hands. How did Gok survive something like that? King Gok was on one of the pieces of land in the open space. He could barely breathe. The guy didn't want to give up. He called the pervert's names and provoked him again. But unfortunately, either due to tiredness or lack of breath, Gok lost consciousness. That shovel looked very suspicious. The guy had such a strange weapon. He is clearly not an ordinary player. Who is he really? Peace wondered. Suddenly, a huge crack appeared and two people came out of it, a man and a woman. The CEO of Chronolife is Choi Dukub, and his partner is still unknown. Dukbe wasn't happy that the guy destroyed another planet again. Peace addressed the man as his grandfather and asked what he was doing there. The man asked the guy the same question. At that moment, the girl noticed another unconscious user and walked towards him. While the girl was trying to bring the guy back to consciousness, Peace asks if this beauty is her grandfather's granddaughter. Lifting the guy a little, the brunette continues trying to find out Gok's condition. She asks him to show more perseverance after all. She was the one who worked hard to make the guy stronger, even if she had to kill him during the game. This is such a caring support service, or to be more precise, the other developer in the world, Yuri. The guy barely understands what she's saying, but it hurts a lot. Gok lost consciousness again. The most important thing is that he is alive. The rest can be fixed. The girl kisses the guy on the lips. Now this must be the romance Gok was talking about. Moments later, his lips were once again burned by the emptiness of the open space. Sweet dreams, my dear user. After a while, Doro tries to wake up his master, hitting the guy's cheek with his hand. He manages to cheer him up. Gok stands up abruptly and screams that he is hurt, holding his head. The guy tries to remember what happened. Suddenly he starts remembering moments that happened recently. A destroyed world, a shockwave that split the planet in half, but all that is over. Now everything is intact and undamaged. attached. Doro happily hugs Gok. He was happy to see the master healthy. A little embarrassed, he says that he was actually worried about himself and how he would have to live on the moon. Judging by the fact that Doro was around, that means Gok is over the moon. Nervously, the guy, the dinosaur, checks that all of the man's limbs are intact. Gok felt great despite having fought against a very strong opponent, although he remembered being seriously injured in the battle against him. Gok asks Doro to tell him everything that happened after he passed out. Doro would be happy to tell you everything she saw. The first thing that happened was that the Earth was divided into two parts. Then, an unknown voice began to come from a huge spatial crack. The human silhouette asked to remain alert and calm down. The girl took the unconscious guy directly to the moon. She reassured Doro that the guy was perfectly fine and just needed time to recover. She used a healing spell to save his life. It was a very powerful spell. Doro asked who was to blame for all that, if the creator, if all of this was her fault. Yuria was flattered that Doro remembered who she was, but she wasn't the one who did it. It was the fault of all the other users, the player Peace, with the reinforced wooden bat plus 99. He crossed over from Chronolife's main server, the strongest being in this universe. Another World has protected new users with a system barrier that prevents users of the main server from entering, until it is destroyed by the reinforced wooden stick plus 99. He destroyed the barrier with a single crushing blow. He has returned to his original world now, but peace will return. The peace of this world will be threatened again. All of this is for Gok to discover when he wakes up. The creator expects great things from this guy. He has to prove himself from all sides and achieve a lot. After finishing her speech, Yuria rebuilt the destroyed planet. Tremendous energy pressed down on both halves of the globe. Everything looked like the creation of a supernova. The dust settled, and Doro tried to open her eyes. Her surprise was indescribable. The planet had been completely restored. Doro looked around, but the creator had disappeared as soon as his presence was no longer needed. The magical barrier was also restored, the same way it was when Gok passed out after listening intently to his acolyte. The boy hesitated. The guy was morally lost in himself. He was too arrogant. Being called the ruler of another world made him think he was invincible. He thought it was pathetic. Once again, he was unable to defend anything, Doro reassured the gentleman. After all, he had survived the battle against the strongest player, which already meant that he had fought well. Strange, since the guy basically just blocked punches and didn't counterattack, all thanks to that weird shovel. How did he manage to block this from her? She was able to withstand the strongest weapon, but because even an entire world was destroyed. Gok handed the shovel to Doro and asked if he knew what materials it was made of, but Doro is just a dinosaur. He doesn't know anything about minerals, but he has an idea of who does. When it comes to minerals, they are the dwarfs. They live together in the Nelwin mine. The dwarves are good at crafts, mining, and jewelry making. They can do everything. If this is indeed the case, Gok uses the crafting skill. Even if Doro doesn't know where the mine is, he has a plan to find it. The quickest and most proven method is to search from a high altitude. Upon clicking the create button, the necessary resources began to connect. At a certain point, it's time to accelerate to achieve certain goals. That perverted person from over 99 who destroyed his house should get a good fight back. And this mysterious girl, she just needs to wait a little longer. Wait for him to gain the kind of power that no mediocre player can match. Nobody gets away with it. In favor of Gok, another world, Dark Highland. The skeleton army fights in numerical superiority, facing 4 high-level players. A user destroys more than 5 skeletons in a single attack. Yoim is a level 49 warrior. The guy is happy that there are a lot of skeletons, and it's not as boring as last time. A red-haired girl, armed only with a shield, destroys the skeleton's bones into dust and ash. Peach, Shield Maiden, level 42. The girl notices that although there are many skeletons, they are all terribly weak. A guy with animal ears teasing a girl. Maybe it's easy for her because she herself is a monster. Fox is a level 41 thief. And the final player on that team is Grace, a level 45 mage. Grace seemed to think that the difficulty level had been lowered specifically for new players. This was a very reasonable decision, because if the monsters were too strong, the influx of new players should not be expected, and the guys evolved faster than the developers expected. Would the server be run by amateurs? Because recently, the server even managed to crash. Foxer thought that their team was the strongest on the server, but Yoim thought those words were too presumptuous. Suddenly, Grace noticed something. Something big was approaching them through the air. Players kept their eyes peeled for the unidentified flying object. Visibility was very poor, but every second the object got closer, and its outline became more and more visible. The boys were hoping that they had been caught by an unknown monster. Yoaim thinks that this monster is clearly unlucky to find their team first. The group is ready to speed up the object's landing, and perhaps earn special achievements for eliminating it. Meanwhile, in the head cabin of Grand Turris, Gok is jubilant. They finally arrived at their destination. The mines are almost there, but Doro says it's just a residence of skeletons. While in Grand Turris's head, Doro can't believe he agreed to the idea. You still don't understand. It's about romance, said Gok, smiling widely. Gok was happy that they had managed to find Grand Turris's head. At that moment, a pitiful whisper of "kill me" was heard. Looking out the window, the guy noticed the living users below. He wasn't alone in this world after all. Looking from above, it was obvious that the group was ready to battle or fight someone. A bright flash of light even blinded the character and Doro. Multiple ground strikes were directed at an unidentified flying object. Gok did not expect such a warm reception from the other players. Each of the team tried to attack the target from a distance, except Pete's shield. Looking at her companions, the red-haired girl decided to try her strength as well. She spun her shield to throw it properly. A huge rotational force, along with the stronger throw, should have broken the monster's defense the first time, but the shield simply bounced off Gok's flying machine. All of their attacks were no more powerful than raindrops hitting a window. Gok can't understand why they are so weak. Maybe they are just newbies. After the battle with that guy in Speedos, the differences became immense. Doro asks the man what they will do with this group of players. Will they just let them go? There's no way Gok wants to let them go since they attacked first. The guy has to settle the score. King Gok turns to Grand Turris and orders that the attackers be punished with a volley of cannon fire to eliminate them. A group of players notice that the jaws of an unknown monster have begun to open. Grand Turris loads his weapon to fight back. Observing what is happening, Yoam feels great discomfort. 3 team members are directly hit. It was the first time they had come across something like this. Yoam watches his defeated comrades in horror. It was incredible. A single attack took down 3 members of one of the strongest teams. Gok saw a survivor. It would be better for him to take the first hit, but now the target should be hit until there was a direct hit on the last target. Ma and 10 times more beam axes. Grand Turris releases a large amount of beams towards the last adventurer, while his sciatic support played. The earth was engulfed in flames. It was impossible to see what was happening, but somehow, miraculously, Yoam was managing to avoid the deadly rays. But it didn't last long, and eventually all targets were hit. After landing, Gok and Doro go out to look around. Yoam was unconscious. Not even the weaponsmith's sword could help him deal with the imminent threat. Doro didn't understand why they had landed, since there was no one there to ask for information about the mines, unless Gok resurrected the ancient skeletons and learned the way from them. The boy liked the idea. This could very well work. Gok would love to try his hand at a new venture. He touched bones and skulls with his shovel, gathering materials from them. The first resource collection task was a success. Immediately after, a window appeared with the ability to create new recipes. The activation conditions were very strange, but very interesting. Gok would now be able to create powerful skeletons depending on the combinations of his resources. The boy was excited to try out his new skills, especially since there were plenty of resources out there to create anything you could imagine. After a while, the boy creates something small and bony, another creature made of bones, which resembles a dog. The boy named his cub Banaji, and now he has many other friends. Doro asks the boy to speed up and stop stalling. They don't have time for games. Suddenly, the boy became interested in another system message, a special creation, given the opportunity to create something unique. Since the boy had created over 100 unique models, he got the chance to create something incredibly rare. Smiling slightly, Gok said he had something like that in mind. Without thinking for another minute, the boy pressed the create button. Large bones began to come together. Gok and his friends watched with their mouths open. It was something unthinkable. The boy and Doro were very scared by what they saw. With the triumphant explosions of fireworks, Gok appeared. He saluted his master. The 7-star skeleton was created using an epic creature, the Lich King himself, who swore allegiance. The King of the Dead kneels and asks his master to give him a name. Doro panics. This creature doesn't like him at all. That skeleton could be a big problem. The Lich King is the most cunning and evil monster. He would never submit to anyone, but Gok had already made his decision. From that moment on, this creature's name would be Piguduk. Despite Doro's reservations, Gok was pleased with his new servant. He seemed obedient and was sure he would do well. The Lich thanks his master by name and asks what his master's first will be. Of course, Gok immediately asked if Piguduk knew where the Nelwin mine was. Doro wanted to say something, but the Lich King immediately stopped him, as he actually knew where it was. Gok asks them to escort him there immediately. The Lich, ready to follow orders, drew his bloody dagger. A few moments earlier, when 2 seemingly ordinary instruments came into contact, an intense glow illuminated the dark forests of another world. The moment the planet shattered, an unprecedented flow of energy shot into outer space. Moments later, the game developer restored everything as it was. Many people did not understand what had happened on the server. They looked up at the sky and saw something that no one had ever been able to see. It wasn't just regular users who saw this. The various monsters inhabiting the planet also noticed the signs. Even the inhabitants of the deep sea were emerging to see the unimaginable in person. Some of the royals watched the incident with surprise. In fact, it was quite fun. Could this have been the new host's message from another world? Users and others who covet the position of ruler of another world? This was a pretty eye-catching statement for everyone who witnessed the words carved into the moon. It will be known as the day of the coming of the king. Let's get back to our hero. They are ready for the journey to the Nelwin mine, but Gok wants to do something first. The boy turned sharply and addressed the king of the dead. At that moment, the lich hid his dagger behind his back. The boy thinks it's time for a change and that the skeletons no longer need to hide. The Lich King doesn't understand what Gok means. The boy explains that they can't just leave these lands after all. There is still a lot to do, and Dark Highland needs a good shakeup. Meanwhile, the Lich still hides his dagger from GC's sight. The boy suggests they stay a little longer, and starting an important case in his opinion, Piguduk does not understand what the man is trying to say. Exchanging glances, Gok asks everyone to prepare. Safety first. King Lich immediately finds himself wearing the uniform of a construction worker. Gok decided to build the safest living space possible. They can build it in a short time if they join forces. Their target is a fortress tower, where it is necessary to gather many weapons so that no one approaches. Security is their responsibility. All the skeletons are jubilant and excited about the new ideas. King Lich is still perplexed by what is happening. Make skeletons big again! After a while, King Loch throws his dagger, catching it again, and swings it with all his might to cut the red ribbon. The construction of the Tower of Darkness has officially been completed. It was truly a magnificent work. Gok looked at Doro and asked him to perform the last safety test. Doro clearly wasn't eager to do it again, but the word of the Lord was above his desires. Focusing on the intruder, Doro slowly turned towards the tower. Within seconds, the target was identified and destroyed. The final test was successful. Gok could now continue his journey with peace of mind. If an enemy appears that they cannot face, they must fire a laser signal and flee. When they see him, Gok will certainly come to his aid. After saying goodbye to Bangaji, Gok set his eyes on his new home. There are no more tasks for Gi there, and they will head to the Nelwin mine. They get on the motorcycle and say goodbye to everyone once again. It's been an exciting adventure on the Isle of Shadows, but now it's time to move on to the main quest. Doro asked why they switched to another vehicle and left Granthuris behind. Guy explained that he was very slow and clumsy. King Lich doesn't understand why the guy spent so much time in that place. Doro was also perplexed, as this was not his main destination. Gok explained that it was fun and that they had a lot of fun there, as well as making new friends. King Lich thought about it. Piguduk would also like this adventure to be enjoyable. Gi would try to make it so, and indeed they had a wonderful time on the road. At night, sitting around the campfire, walking in the fresh air, they eventually successfully reached the mine. As they approached the entrance, they noticed large support beams. The entire corridor was lit by red miners' lamps. It was quite a spectacular place at first glance. Okay, that all sounds good, but where are the dwarves? According to the Lich King's last recollection, there had been no news of the dwarves in the mine for quite some time. Gok was shocked by what he heard. Since a certain day, the dwarves stopped leaving the mine. Among those who went to the mine to find out what happened, no one returned. Doro panicked because the Lich hadn't told her this before. The dead king replied that he had not been asked about it. As the group thought about what to do now, someone was watching them from above. Suddenly, Gok notices two individuals attacking him from afar. Doro and Lich fend off the attack from strangers. Glowing red eyes watch them in wonder. Gi asks Piguduk to check what is happening there. Lich is happy to carry out the task. Upon seeing the king of the dead aggressively going into combat, Gok asks that they not be killed, only captured. The Lich gives the two dwarves two strong slaps. Gok observed the attackers well. These are the guys we were looking for. The guy thought it was strange that the dwarves were so aggressive. Have they always been like this? Approaching one of them, the subject begins to bring him to his senses. After regaining consciousness, the dwarf advised the strangers to get out of there. All the dwarves in this mine have now lost their senses and become violent. Anyone who enters here will be killed. After these words, the group decided to take a look around and noticed the presence of a large number of hostile dwarves. So if they could bring these two back to consciousness, there had to be a way to do the same to the others. It is likely that the heavy blows to the head brought them to their senses. Smiling slightly, the guy had a fantastic idea. There was a simple and effective way: physiotherapy. Gok turned to the dwarves. He tries to provoke them into attacking and succeeds. The dwarves are furious and want to do battle. The fun begins. 3 against a whole family of dwarves. Lich immediately resorts to his magical abilities, launching multiple clouds of dark energy at the approaching army of opponents. Doro acts like a real head crab, getting into the heads of old people, and Gok uses his mechanical fists to throw his resistance group in all directions. It sounds like a very exciting task. As soon as the guy asks everyone to stay alert, he opens his back to attack. Gok spots his attacker and successfully counters the attack, at the same time as he is helped by the Lich King. The guy didn't expect to see Leech at his side. They lost sight of each other, and the guy said he could have done it himself. Leech has no doubt about that. It was just a coincidence. Observing what was happening, the first dwarf who woke up asked them not to make so much noise, as a sound like that could wake up a real monster. Suddenly, a huge bony paw breaks the walls of the mine. In that second, everyone around was frozen in surprise. The sleeping beast had awakened from its sleep. No one had ever encountered this creature before, not even Doro, who knows all the great monsters well. Things have taken a completely different turn now. They would have to face a more powerful opponent than a bunch of crazy retirees. Gok and Doro retreat to a safe distance to come up with a new plan. It was a zombie dragon revived by a curse. You can read more information in the pop-up window. The monster gives no chance to prepare and attacks quickly. For unknown reasons, the zombie dragon only pursues the boy. Doro is very happy that this time he doesn't have to be the guinea pig and attract the monster to himself. We need to do something urgently because the situation is getting out of control. Gok makes a run and calls for Grand Tourist. Grand Tourist has the opportunity to prove that it is not as useless as they make it out to be. The hostile monster is ready for battle, so the giant's fight is about to begin. Every opponent looks intimidating, but Grand Tourist isn't used to being looked down on. He starts his engine and tries to gain altitude to continue the battle of glances. With a sudden movement, the zombie dragon drops the thruster and thus lands forward on the ground. The monster grabs Grand Tourist's head with its paws. It looks like this fight will end in defeat for the green man. Doro cannot control Grand Tourist's movements. His movements are stiff. He needs his body now, Gok's request, but he doesn't know how he can help yet, as he doesn't have the necessary resources. Suddenly, the guy remembers an interesting feature. He can create something like that with bones. Suddenly, a strong glow appears where Grand Tourist's head was. The zombie dragon continues to just stare at the glow of light, not understanding what is happening. The monster saw something incredible in front of him. Gok once again created an object using the Bone Maker skill. This time, it is a legendary creature, and the number of stars is impressive. A huge Grand Tourist skull of an incredibly dangerous level appeared before the poor zombie dragon. Whether out of fear or confidence, the monster let out a piercing scream. Grand Tourist made a direct attack with its head. The monster immediately lost consciousness, after which the bone Grand Tourist threw its opponent into the air with its tail. Gok carefully observes the situation and orders the monster to be finished. Grand Tourist raises its head and opens its mouth, gathering enough energy for a final attack. Skull Miapo! A direct hit to the enemy. The power of such an attack practically vaporizes the zombie dragon. The lightning continues to destroy everything in its path. Everyone watches this incredible sight. Clearly, no one has ever seen anything like this before. Gok is also satisfied. Maybe this monster was the reason for all those mysterious disappearances. There were spectators gathered outside as well, watching the enormous energy pillar piercing through the ancient mountain. One of them thinks that apparently they managed to defeat him. What will they do now? The gay-haired man asked his master. The man pulled out a piece of paper and crumpled it. It was a really good question. The contract was no longer valid, and the man threw it away. This man is a shark called Heart Heater, and his assistant is Rome. It seems that now they must contact some idiot. Soon, the noise in the Nelwin mine subsided. The dwarves who had regained consciousness began to celebrate their long-awaited freedom. As they approached the defeated zombie dragon's eye, they could not believe that they were ruled by someone like him. This is so humiliating. While the palaces were inspecting the monster's remains, Gok asked Doro if he had found anything interesting. Doro replied that it was empty. The little beastman commented that something strange was happening there. There shouldn't be a monster there that he didn't know about. It was the first time he had seen that one. Then one of the dwarves told me that the creature had suddenly appeared in the mine one day, saying that rumors had reached him that these guys had saved them. Miner Kim thanked him sincerely after shaking hands with Gok and the green-bearded dwarf. Taking advantage of the perfect moment, the protagonist asked the miner something, handing him the old shovel. He asked about the material it was made of. When the elderly dwarf took the item in his hands, everyone immediately realized that he was a true master of his art. This texture, these curves, he instantly analyzed the essence of this marvel. The answer he gave to the question shocked everyone present. He has no idea what this shovel is or what it is made of. In fact, he doesn't really know anything about this mineral. He found it fascinating, so after saying goodbye to his rescuers, Kim decided to shovel away, but soon realized what that old geyser was about to do. Gok grabbed him by the beard angrily and shouted at him not to leave in such a hurry. After a while, King Gok demonstrated the abilities of that shovel to the dwarves. After building a tall fountain in the shape of a zombie dragon, he raised the shovel and asked again if anyone knew what the mineral was. The Mine Guardian replied once again that he had no idea, but he still wouldn't mind accepting the object as a gift. letting his words pass through his ears. Gok wondered what he should do next. He still wanted to know what his weapons were made of, so he asked the Lich King if he knew where the best place was to get information in the other world. Piguk, in turn, advised going to the launch pad, as that is where users start the game. There's likely to be a lot more different information there as well. However, Josa was surprised that there was a launching pad in this world. He himself appeared in the middle of the field. So where did this initial city come from? Rim, has that idiot arrived yet? Heart Heater asked his assistant as he walked through the launch plaza market. Following him, Rim narrated that the idiot had promised to appear after completing all his tasks. Their conversation was interrupted by the shouts of someone who caught the crowd's attention by showing everyone a leaflet with the head of a mechanized kite drawn on it. The boy asked everyone to listen carefully. Yoim told the audience that this monster was incredibly strong, and if left free, this creature would turn another world into a desert for others. Hearing Yoim's team's plea for help was a surprise. In this case, the matter was indeed serious. The show entertained Lone Shark as he walked along the line of riders. He noticed that everyone was very energetic today. At the same moment, he heard a familiar voice. "Are you sure about this?" the woman asked playfully. "If it's as you say, fighting this monster will definitely be extremely fun." As soon as the woman said this, the ranks of knights began to move. Everyone in the square immediately recognized the pattern on the soldiers' armor. Now, the royal palace guards were at the front. The Divine Guild members were gathered there. Besides them, red-cloaked warriors were also marching through the square. The red capes with white crosses made it clear that a group of 10 strongest holy knights had arrived. This is the Crossing the Line Guild. A group of the strongest magicians in the royal court were also not left out, belonging to the Holy Land Guild. Valbinden, the Guild of Righteous Thieves, also took its place. And to complete that parade, the strongest organization from the other world arrived, the Guild of Justice. The gathering of the 5 guilds in one place formed a new structure, the World Guild Alliance, a branch of the other world. The current commander of this organization is Miss Hawk. Yoim and his troops' speech caught her attention, and now Yoim will have to escort Miss Hawk and the World Guild to the place where this monster appeared. At the same time, somewhere in the Nelwin mine, King Gok warned his partner that he needed to disconnect now to take a quick break. When he returned, he planned to head straight to the launch pad. Calling Kim close, the boy asked if he could take care of things at the mine during his absence. The elderly dwarf warned that he would probably be drinking and resting for as long as they lived under the monster's oppression, saying that he was a goner. Doro asked the dwarf what he had in his backpack. It was then that Kim took out the diamantium and said that he was going to sell it in the square, and Gok would get the biggest percentage of that business. Naturally, this was a form of gratitude for rescuing the dwarves from prison. After negotiating with the mine guardian, the protagonist left the game. He left the King of the Dead in charge of the safety of Kim, the diamantium, and the dwarves. Before Gok finally disappeared from the game world, all the dwarves said a warm goodbye, waving to him as well. He smiled and promised to return as soon as possible. System alert, you have been disconnected from the game. King Gok, with the same smile on his face, was lying on the bed with his hand raised. Back in reality, he slowly lifted his VR headset glasses. For a while, he just stood there, staring at the ceiling with an unsatisfied expression. Every time he came back from a game, reality hit him hard. After sitting a little longer, the boy felt very hungry. After making a curry, he sat down at the table and turned on the news as usual. Chronolife, Another World, was at the top of the media popularity charts. Reports said that the rare material, which had been facing shortages recently, caused a worldwide uproar. This mineral is called diamondium. Diamondium had not been on the market for a month due to the large trading spot, and the price was set at 10 times the original value. Upon hearing this news, Jack remembered that this was the ore that old Kim was going to sell. Well, in that case, the guy is going to make a little more money than he expected. As soon as he thought of this, the news announced that the current market price of diamondium was 100 million per kilogram. Surprised, the guy even spat out the curry he had just put in his mouth. He hadn't even realized that this entire time, he was literally sitting on a mountain of gold. Meanwhile, at the small inn in the starting town, Rome was really annoyed at the fact that this idiot was so late. What if he doesn't even show up? However, Heart Heater was confident that he would definitely come. He hates losing more than he hates death. Still, that idiot is the biggest idiot in the world. "Ah, that's very ungentlemanly, huh?" murmured Lone Shark with a smile. At the same time, a kind of rumble was heard in the center of the initial city. System alert, connecting to another world. After this announcement, the silhouette of an unknown warrior began to form right in the middle of the crowded square. This person is number 1 according to the system's definition. His golden armor, red hair, and crown with a purple stone on his head, all these features make him stand out from the gray mass. The best hardcore leveling warrior is back. A short time later, at the inn, smiling gently, Lone Shark commented that it had been a while since they last saw each other. Agreeing with him, the hardcore leveling warrior asked Heartheater how he was doing. Rumors had reached him that the zombie dragon had died. The hardcore warrior wishes he could have dealt with this himself, but it seems he came too late. As Rim irritably served tea to his guest, Heartheater started talking about the boy who killed the zombie dragon. It appears he took possession of the Nelwin mine after the fight. After poking Rim, the hardcore warrior asked to get closer to the action. "Are you going to order me to eliminate him?" he asked, taking an epic sip of his tea, before collapsing on the floor screaming in pain with his tongue burned by the hot drink. Meanwhile, throwing some kind of foil at the guy lying on the ground, Heartheater asked if he would accept the new mission. The leaf landed right on the hardcore leveling warrior's face. "Your mission will be to find whoever took possession of the Nelwin mine in the Dark Highlands. The hardcore warrior will then have to comply with what is stipulated in the contract." At the same time, at Nelwin mine, suddenly the master of these lands was back in the game. But why so fast? It hasn't even been a few hours. Just upon appearing in the other world, King Gok said that they should hurry. Today, his destination was the initial square. Old Kim didn't expect the guy to show up either, and so he went out to meet him in his afternoon nap attire, excited about what he had just heard on the news. Gok was ready. Everything was ready to go, and then the guy announced that they were leaving now. No one understood what the rush was. Gok once again left his faithful Lich King in charge of the mine. He chose the smartest and strongest guard to protect such an important strategic facility. Noticing that the gentleman was in a great hurry, Pagoda commented that apparently the price of diamondium was quite high. After all, they were next to a dark island. Everyone knows that diamondium doesn't occur often, even in mineral-rich places. Therefore, the King of the Undead reminded him that it might not be safe to transport so many valuable materials. Good security isn't enough. You also need a reliable form of transportation. After thinking about what they would use to transport so much diamondium, the Lich and his master came to a consensus. A few minutes later, the entire expedition was sitting in the improvised vehicle created with the head of Grand Tourist. Pigaduk's idea was quite ingenious. They simply detached the head, solving all security issues. Furthermore, this mode of transportation was not only convenient, but also quite fast. And as Gok proudly praised Grand Tourist, the sound of a bow being fired was heard nearby. The arrow flew at a tremendous speed and pierced the machine's wheel. The impact was so strong that it launched Grand Tourist into the air, leaving Gok and everyone on board in a state of shock. The World Guild army became visible on top of the nearest hill, and the one who shot that unfortunate arrow was Miss Hawk. Grand Tourist found himself surrounded in an open area. For Hawk, it was the perfect setting to begin his performance. Pointing an arrow with TNT attached to the sky, the woman announced an all-out attack as soon as she let go of the bowstring. A bright red flash appeared in the sky. This turned out to be the signal for the rest of the troops. The Divine Guild, led by their commander, began a melee attack. The Crossing the Line Guild team, with Mad Su Yang and the Vanguard, would act as support. And of course, to create a surprise effect, the monster would also be attacked from the sky. And why these guys came here, I have no idea. After giving orders to most of the troops, Missa Hawk also rushed into battle along with the men of his guild. The World Guild Alliance had completely surrounded Grand Tourist. Looking out the window of his car, Gok couldn't identify who those people were, but that no longer mattered. Without the intention of investigating, the guy activated the Metamecha beam. However, Miss Hawk already expected this action. Before Grand Tourist attacked, the woman ordered Plan A to be carried out. Because of this, all the soldiers managed to dodge and counterattack. The guild commanders were also not left out and advanced to the front line. Observing from above, Bibid Baba Boo noticed that some of the information about the monster coincided with the report of the players who had faced it. By the way, the loser Yoaim was also present in this battle. Running ahead of all the commanders and squads, he jumped directly onto the hull of Grand Tourist. Brandishing his sword with all his might, he tried to pierce the monster's eye. But when his blade touched the eye, there was a suspicious sound of glass. Having failed to pierce the enemy's eye, Yoaim noticed the silhouette of a person on the other side of the glass. Leaning against the glass, Gok began to glare at the guy with hatred. He then sharply spun the glass compartment of Grand Tourist, crushing Yoaim against the hull of the giant machine. Upon seeing a player like them, the World Guild's army was paralyzed. "You damned thieves!" roared King Gok, furious. Raising his foot, he shouted even louder that there was no way he was going to give up his diamantium. At that same moment, a huge mechanical foot appeared beneath Grand Tourist's head. When the guy began to kick the machine's hull, the mechanical foot, repeating its movements, began to crush the enemies one by one. Still not understanding what was happening, the commanders and their troops tried to flee the battlefield. However, the general panic was contained by the head of the Thieves Guild. The soldiers and their commanders were stunned to see the player. They didn't know if he was a friend or an enemy, so they hesitated. Now, however, it was clear that bastard had attacked them and therefore had officially officially become an enemy. Quickly, the guild leaders composed themselves. They went for a combined attack, supporting each other and quickly closing the distance with the target. Just when Gok thought all was lost, an unknown voice was heard. First sword style wielded, a flash of moonlight. After saying those words, the hardcore leveling warrior defeated most of the World Guild soldiers on the field. Seeing such a performance, Gok and the others were paralyzed in astonishment. Meanwhile, the red-haired swordsman had already landed beside him. As he approached, the stranger asked if he was the guy with the shovel who had taken the mine. Looking suspiciously at the redhead, Gok asked, "What if I go?" Then, slamming his sword against the shovel, the hardcore leveling warrior replied, "Dear client, allow me to escort you to safety.